Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another review, and as you can tell, I'm continuing my review of the Planet of the Apes series. Now it's time for the second sequel, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. One thing I have to say that's special about this film, at least from a sentimental viewpoint, is this is actually the first entry in the series I saw. I don't remember exactly what I knew about Planet of the Apes at the time. I think I was aware of it, but I hadn't seen it, maybe in its entirety. But I was flipping through channels one day when I was sometime in the mid 90s, I think it was 95, 96-ish. Anyway, I came across this film on AMC. My grandma was like, "Oh, it's one of the Apes films. Those are good." So I sat down and watched it, and I enjoyed it. And then from there, I went and watched the other films, the original, the sequel, then the latter two sequels, which those are the last two I actually saw. It was only a couple years ago that I actually saw Conquest, and that was because I was trying to find it to watch in its entirety. AMC hardly showed it, but I'll get to my thoughts on that film another time. Now, I still have two more films to revisit, but I have to say so far this is probably my second favorite of the films in the series, and definitely my favorite of the original sequels. And that's because it does tackle not the exact same issues, but some of the ones that the original film did, and still has some of that satire in it. But it's from the reverse. Instead of a human that can talk being in a society of talking apes, and him being, excuse me, let me sit over, and him being a freak, it's basically talking apes in our society where they'd be considered freaks. Now it has a 6.2 on IMDb, a 52 with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think that could be a little higher, and a 78 with the critics, and this is the consensus. One of the better Planet of the Apes sequels, Escape is more character-driven than the previous films and more touching as a result. Yeah, it is. It's a little bit more... It's kind of character-driven like the first one is. It's definitely more character-driven in the sequel, though. Even though it does have a little bit of that, you could tell it was kind of rushed to get it in, because from what I understand, it was filmed in 6 weeks, which you see a little bit of that, but not a lot. It comes off as being better than the previous film. I think that's partially because of the fact that you didn't have to stretch out the money as far, because from the estimates you guys already know from the previous review, from what I hear, Beneath was filmed for 2.5 to around 4 million, which was less than I think about 6 million the first film was filmed on, so the look is going to suffer if it's going to be in the same world. Whereas this one had a $2 to a $2.5 million budget. I say that because Wikipedia says 2, but on the VHS tape it said 2.5. And considering we only have 3 chimps in the whole film, 2 of which are throughout most of the film, makeup costs are down, and since it's set in then present day, your costs the money could be stretched out further. Now, if you think about it, Beneath should have been sequel-proof, because it ends with the nuclear bomb detonating and destroying the Earth. That's kind of sequel-proof. But then again, they've always found ways to make sequels of that. Halloween 2, the original one, should have been sequel-proof, because Michael Myers was burned to a cinder, but yet 2 separate times he managed to figure out a way to get out of it. One, he just disappears, the other one, he's put in a coma. I mean, even H2O should have been sequel-proof, but retcon! Never underestimate the power of a retcon. But, anyway, despite Beneath's ending, 20th Century Fox still wanted a sequel. Roddy McDowell actually mentioned in the franchise documentary Behind the Planet of the Apes that Arthur P. Jacobs sent Beneath screenwriter Paul Den a telegram containing the words "Apes exist." I guess telling him he wants a sequel. And he decided to get away from the destructive ending by having Cornelius and Zero go back in time, by having another smart chimpanzee figure out a way to fix Taylor's spaceship. Now, all this leaves one scratching his head a little bit. It's like, okay, they were kind of left in charge at the end of the previous film, so they could have, because it doesn't really give an indication of how long passes between that, but it seems like no more than a couple days. I mean, with the technology they have, it would be kind of impossible unless they were doing that from the ending of the first film. So it's like weird, but then again, there's inconsistencies between the first and second film as well. I mean, Zira and Cornelius are married in the second film, or in the first film they were engaged, and she's pregnant. So unless they had sex before they were married, and they married quickly because of it, there's no way she could be pregnant far enough along to actually know it, and by the events of this film actually give birth. But that's how it goes. Now apparently one of the harder things to get was Kim Hunter to make the film, but they eventually got her to. And apparently at one point in the film, when they were shooting one scene involving the apes, once they finished shooting it where the apes were in the camera, they said, okay, we're going to take the makeup off of you because for the next take we're doing that's their side, so you only need to be there for voicing. And as Kim was having the makeup taken off, she realized, you know what, this doesn't feel right. It was taking her out of the character of Zero, so I guess they had her stop. They had them stop taking it off, and I guess she stayed in there. And apparently McDowell also said that he had a sense of isolation for this film, considering him and Hunter were the only people dressed as chimpanzees, which I think kind of shows in his performance a little bit and makes his performance as Cornelius in this scenario make a little bit more sense and make it feel a little bit more genuine. And it makes me wonder if that's what Charlton Heston felt in the first film, but a little weird thing. And the film was directed by Don Taylor, which I'm going to check to see offhand what else he's directed. After this, he directed an adaptation of Tom Sawyer. 1977, he directed The Island of Dr. Moreau. In 1980, he directed The Final Countdown, which is another film involving time travel, involving Pearl Harbor. And he also directed another sequel in 1978 called Damien Omen 2, which I still have to watch the Omen films. That's right, I've never seen the Omen films. Don't you dare try to put a curse on me. Just never gotten around to it. Now, the film begins with a helicopter finding a crashed spaceship. They along with the military rescue team, eventually get there and help the passengers out, and we find out they are three apes: Cornelius and Zero from the previous films, and Dr. Milo, a new character who kind of comes out of nowhere and is kind of a slight Deus Ex Machina. I guess you could also call it a Gary Sue a little bit because of how his intellect is and how he's able to do it. But I'd say he's more of a plot device character. And he's kind of also a throwaway character because he dies just not even 20 minutes into the film. And that was because his actor Sal Mineo was uncomfortable with the makeup and decided to get it off. It makes me wonder what originally this character was going to do. Was he going to survive longer and then get killed later off? But it would have been interesting to see them. I bet he would have been interesting in scenes like in front of the commission and then during the interrogations, but alas, I guess the only way to figure out what part he played would be to read the original script. Well, as you can kind of guess, the apes are put through tests to test their intelligence, and it's only when Zero talks in front of the humans that they're like, okay, something better, something more here. And they are eventually taken into a government-led inquiry where they tell part of the truth but not all of it, like they withhold the fact that Zero experimented on living and dead humans, dissecting them, and that they knew Taylor. That one, I think, from a storytelling perspective, they probably could have told that they knew he was there, but that they hadn't seen him in a while. But I guess that would have led to more questions, so I guess you could say from that perspective they probably were wise in not telling the full truth. Well, as you could kind of guess, just like when Taylor showed up in the Ape Society, there are going to be people in here that are not going to be happy. And that is, of course, Dr. Otto Haslane, who actually wants to kill the apes, especially when he finds out Zero is pregnant. And, of course, he becomes the antagonist, and as the film goes on, he tries to kill them, or at least sterilize them and get rid of the baby. And he's trying to do it for the good of humanity, but you can tell he's doing it because that's probably just his justification, that he's probably doing it because of the fact he doesn't like the fact that they're talking apes or whatever. It's a lot of, you can read into it what you will, but it just seems that he's kind of the human version of Dr. Zaius from the first film, only without really a lot of reason. As much as you hate Zaius, he at least has a sort of reason for believing what he believes about humans, because he has that whole history of it, and a little bit in Taylor's personality, but also the fact that he can see in humans some of the bad qualities that apes possess, and since humans possess all of them and are stupid, just treat them that way. Now with Haslane, you could probably see that he sees the good that humans have, and is probably a little jealous that at least with the chimps, they don't have the negative qualities. And of course, Zira and Cornelius, they don't really state it, but you can probably guess that they do see a little bit of the qualities that their apes possess in humans, like the intelligence aspect of chimps, but also a little bit of the pompous aspect of the orangutans have, and then of course the violent tendencies of the gorillas. But they also see that there are good people just like there are good apes. We have Stephanie Branton and Lewis Dixon, who are two human characters who actually do help them by the end. And I'm not going to give away the full ending, but you can tell it's probably not going to end well for them. And it doesn't, but that's all I'm going to say on that. And of course, this actually does have an ending that can lead into a sequel, because the ending of the first film, it kind of did leave it open for a sequel, but you're like, yeah, it doesn't. The second film definitely doesn't leave it open for a sequel. This one does, the next one does, and the next one and the last one kind of does, but you could tell this is probably going to be the last one they're going to make. Now, the plot of the film also centers on scientific experimentation on animals, nuclear war, and government intrusion, which were social issues of the day, which is, like, this is why I think it's where its strength lies, is that, like the first film, it comments on this. It has a little bit of a satire in it, which I don't really want to give away. I think people should watch the film. Some of it is coming, of course, from the fact that the apes are out of their element in their new society, and they have to deal with the culture clash. So there's that fish out of water humor, and then some other humor that comes off naturally. Now, the nuclear war aspect, of course, ties into the ending of the previous film, and also the fact that the film was made and set during the Cold War, the government intrusion because of the Dr. Haslin, the whole inquiry, and then them trying to take out the apes. And the experimentation on animals is kind of a given because of what we know Zira did in her society, and then coming back in, and that's actually one of the arguments Haslin has for killing them. But even though I do disagree with the council's decision in the film about what to do with Zira and Cornelius, they do actually bring up one of the counter arguments I have, and that is that they experimented on humans who were animals in their world, just like we experimented on chimps who are animals in our world. Which, of course, this brings up the thing, this actually brings up a question, what if chimps actually did have better intelligence than they did? Would it still be, well, granted they're intelligent as it is, but brings up the, I guess you could say, I could segue to this, it brings up the question, is experimenting on chimps, or even any primate whatsoever, right, considering that in the tree of life they are our closest living relatives? Like, should we experiment on chimps? I mean, they're animals, but they're intelligent. I mean, you could teach them sign language and they are self-aware. I mean, a dog will look in a mirror and bark at it if it realizes that there's a dog there. But a chimp will do the same thing, get territorial, then it will slowly know, it's like, wait a minute, that's not another chimp, that's me. You'll realize it'll be self-aware, just like us. We look in a mirror like, oh, it's us. And like I said, sign language and all that, and they even, have the same emotions as we do. Like that one gorilla that, when the cat died, it was just a little bit depressed. It just brings up all those issues that each person's going to see into the film, what they know, I guess, and what they could see in it. But that's some of the stuff I see when I watch this film. And I guess you could say, like the first film, now that I'm an adult and have a better mind, I enjoy the film more now than I did before. Now, the acting from the actors is very great. McDowell and Hunter are still on top of their game as the characters, and they expand their performances a little bit here. This is Hunter's last part in the series, I believe. And I know McDowell continued on, and it is his return after he couldn't be in 2 because of a prior commitment. Bradford Dillman and Natalie Trudy as Lewis and Stephanie were good. Eric Brandon, Braden, as Haslin. You just want to smack him. William Wyndham as the president, and I thought he did a good job. You actually could sympathize with him a little bit, considering where he was. He didn't really want to hurt the apes, but you know how people in that kind of situation are. He did speak some political talk, but any politician's going to do that, whether a good politician or a bad one. He did actually bring religion into it a little bit by mentioning Christ and what happened when he was an attempted assassination happened on him as a child. And I guess considering the next film, that little analogy is fitting. Sal Mineo as Milo is okay. Then, of course, we got Ricardo Montalban as Armando in the film, a circus owner who loves animals. And, of course, he comes back in the next film. It's great to see him in here, even though he doesn't really have a lot to do in this film or the next film, but he's always good to see in a movie. Heston has 2 brief appearances with stock footage from the previous film, so take that with what you will. The music is once again done by Jerry Goldsmith, which adds another great touch to the film, because one thing that really was a downgrade besides the effects in the second film was the music. It just didn't really have the same bite that the first one did. And the score really is great. I mean, the opening and main theme of this film really sets the tone for the film and draws you in. And other parts of the score kind of have a 70s rock feel. So it really does set the time that the movie's set in, and it really does carry the film. And of course, it just, when you listen to it, you're like, yeah, that's why Jerry Goldsmith was an excellent composer. And on a personal note, is why I definitely put him in my top 5 favorite composers, along with John Williams, Hans Zimmer. I don't know who else would be on the list at the moment, but he's definitely in there. The cinematography is good, really does capture the 70s vibe, and it really does add to the tone of the film. And that's about it I could say about the film. My rating for Escape from the Planet of the Apes is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you have only seen the original film and are thinking about which sequels to watch, personally I'd say try to watch all 5 of them in order, but if there's one sequel in the series you have to watch, I definitely give Escape from the Planet of the Apes my vote.